All right, diving in today, folks. We're going somewhere pretty interesting.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of this crossroads, right? Tulpamancy and subpersonalities.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
And it might sound like, whoa, where are we going with this? But honestly, it's super relevant to how we connect these days, like how we relate to others, but also those different parts of ourselves.
I see what you mean.
Yeah.
Like, it's both outward and inward connections all at once.
Exactly. So for this deep dive, we've got this document, Subpersonalities and Tulpamancy, dated April 7, 2025.
Mm-hmm.
And what's really cool is the author, they're living with, get this, 10 distinct subpersonalities.
10. Wow. That's a lot, even for someone well-versed in this.
Right. So today's mission, it's pretty straightforward. We want to understand Tulpamancy's subpersonalities, how they're similar, how they're different, where these ideas even came from, and why we're hearing about them more and more.
Right, right. Like, what's the cultural context here?
Totally. And we want to do this clearly, make it easy to grasp. Like, you don't need a PhD to follow along, but you'll walk away feeling pretty informed.
Love that approach.
So first things first, Tulpamancy. Can we break that down? Like, what's the simplest way to explain it?
Sure. Basically, tulpamancy is when someone creates on purpose and then interacts with a tulpa. Think of it as a thought form, like a sentient imaginary companion, but you're actively willing it into existence.
So like more than just daydreaming.
Oh, way more. It's focused mental energy, visualization, that kind of thing.
And people who do this are
Tulpamancers.
Tulpamancers, right.
Yeah.
So when we say a tulpa is like a second mind, does that, I don't know, mess with how we normally think about just having one consciousness?
That's a huge question.
Yeah.
And from what tulpamancers describe, the tulpa becomes self-aware, like it exists in their mind, it has its own thoughts,
Whoa.
and even internal speech. Like it's not just you talking to it. Sometimes it can even talk back externally.
Wait, what?
Yeah, there's something called proxying. It's like the tulpamancer lets the tulpa use their body to communicate, typing, speaking, things like that.
So hold on, it's not just an imaginary friend you chat with, but something that's thinking and responding in your head all on its own.
That's the experience reported by many, yeah.
Wow. Okay, so what are the implications of a tulpa being able to think and talk back independently?
Well, I mean, it definitely raises questions about control and autonomy within the mind. I mean, whose thoughts are whose?
Right. Right. Okay. So where did this whole tulpamancy thing even come from?
So the word tulpa itself, that has roots in Tibetan mysticism. Traditionally, it was a magical spiritual thing, like something you'd create through intense meditation.
Oh, so it's got this whole spiritual background.
Yeah, yeah. But these days, like especially online, starting around 2010, 2011, there's been a shift. Websites like tulpa.info, the subreddit Our Tulpas, Discord servers, they've all reframed it.
Okay.
More psychological, less mystical.
Yeah.
It's about imagination, cognitive stuff, mental techniques.
So like a modern take on an ancient practice.
You could say that, yeah.
Cool. So if someone wanted to, I don't know, give this tulpa creation a shot, what would they do?
Well, the source lays out some common steps.
Okay.
Big one is visualization.
Mm-hmm.
You got to create this super clear image in your head, right? Appearance, voice, even how they move.
Ah, so like really detailed.
Oh, yeah, super detailed.
Yeah.
And then there's narration. You just talk to the tulpa, like treat it like a real person who's there with you.
Kind of like method acting, but inside your mind.
There's definitely that intentional engagement, the role playing,
Yeah.
and then there's personality forcing.
Okay.
You're basically shaping their personality, affirmations, consistent interaction.
So you're actively molding them.
In a way, yeah.
Yeah.
And the source talks about passive and active forcing. It's about how much time, mental energy you dedicate.
Okay.
Passive is just being aware they're there.
Mm-hmm.
Active is dedicated mental sessions. And some people even try imposition.
Mm.
That's where it gets almost sensory. They want to see, hear, feel the tulpa like it's physically present.
Whoa. So that's a lot of mental effort, right? Why would someone go through all that?
Well, there are a bunch of reasons, actually.
Like what?
Big one, especially given all the digital stuff we were talking about, is loneliness.
Yeah.
People want companionship.
That makes sense.
And it makes you think,
Right.
right, about what companionship even means, if it can be internal like this.
Yeah, it's like a whole new way of looking at connection.
Exactly. And for some, it's about creativity,
Mm.
pushing their consciousness to the limits.
Mm.
Others, they find it helps with their mental health. Some say tulpas help manage anxiety, depression.
Mm-hmm. Really?
Yeah. And then there's the whole idea of plurality, non-singlet identity.
Ah, like feeling like more than one being in one body.
Exactly.
Which ties into the author's experience with subpersonalities. But before we get into that, I gotta ask, are tulpas, like, real?
Oof, that's a deep one,
Yeah.
philosophically speaking.
Yeah.
I mean, physically, no, they don't exist out there in the world.
Right.
Most folks would say they're imaginary.
Sure.
But for those who create and interact with them,
Yeah.
they often describe them as totally real. Like, subjectively, they're there.
Okay, so it's a kind of internal reality.
You could say that, yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the author and their subpersonalities. They've got 10 forming this internal system. Tell me about them.
Okay, so the author gives us these little glimpses, right?
Yeah.
There's Addie, all joyful, optimistic. Bannock, the leader, disciplined, purposeful.
Okay.
Liz, the queen bee, charismatic, bold. Devin, the protector, kind of stoic, but carrying a lot of difficult experiences. Kelly, the nurturer, focused on tradition, emotional connection. Kenny, cautious, the realist, a quiet guardian. Mac, the class clown, but also thoughtful about their role in the system. Kira, calm, wise, the observer. Tommy, artistic, inventive, feels misunderstood a lot. And finally, Val, ambitious, the chef of life, blends everything, gets stuff done.
Wow, that's a whole crew, a mental United Nations or something. And the author specifically says they see these as extensions of themselves, not totally separate beings unless they're, intentionally mimicking them like with AI.
Yeah, that's a key point.
It is. So let's get into the overlaps and differences between tulpas and subpersonalities. Similarities first. What does the source say?
Okay, so both exist in the mind. They can both have their own, voices, thoughts, feelings, reactions. Both can have a degree of autonomy, so they're not totally controlled by the host personality. And they can have names, memories, their own views. Plus, they can all interact internally with each other and the host.
So inside the person's head, the experience could feel similar.
Very much so.
Okay, so what about the differences? Let's break those down nice and clear.
All right, so the source compares them in a few ways. First, origin. Tulpas are created consciously, intentionally. Subpersonalities, they can just kind of emerge.
Right, so one's deliberate, the other's organic.
Yeah. Then there's how they're framed. A tulpa is often seen as a separate being, another mind in your head. But subpersonalities are more like facets of the same identity.
So one's the other's part of.
Right. And their purpose can differ too.
Yeah.
Tulpas is often companionship or exploring that multiple minds thing. But subpersonalities, more about balance, healing, understanding yourself better.
Makes sense.
And then there's agency, that feeling of acting independently. Tulpas, they can become like full-blown individuals, their own desires, motivations. Subpersonalities might be more like parts of a whole, serving specific roles.
Like a tulpa is a roommate in your head, but a subpersonality is a different hat you wear.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And then there's control.
Right.
Tulpas, they often start with less autonomy and then gain more. But subpersonalities, the control can be more fluid, different ones stepping up at different times.
Interesting.
But you gotta remember, these are just trends, not hard rules. Some tulpas might not be super independent. Some subpersonalities can feel just as vivid as any tulpa.
So it's like the initial intention and how you think about it might be the big difference, but the actual experience can be similar.
Exactly.
And the source even mentions you could have both, right?
Certainly. Someone with subpersonalities could still decide, hey, I want to create a tulpa too, like for companionship or whatever.
It's like blending the lines even further.
Totally. And it makes you rethink wholeness,
Yeah.
what it even means to be oneself.
Huge implications.
Yeah. And the source gets into that, about how this awareness of tulpas and subpersonalities is changing things.
Okay.
It suggests that engaging with these internal parts, whether you created them or they just showed up, can be empowering.
Empowering how?
Well, it can bring companionship, help you manage emotions, give you self-understanding, even help heal from trauma or feeling alone. It's like inner diversity becomes a strength.
That's pretty cool.
It is. But the source does give a little warning too. Yeah, it says for some folks, especially if they've got unaddressed mental health stuff or they tend to dissociate, things could get complicated.
Like it could make things worse.
Potentially, yeah. If there's no grounding, no support, no self-awareness, it could become confusing, overwhelming.
So it's not that tulpas or subpersonalities are bad in themselves.
Right. It depends on the person, their life, how it all functions.
Gotcha.
And the source, it gives these key questions to ask.
Okay, what are they?
Are these internal figures helpful? Do they support your well-being, your agency? Or do they mess with your daily life, blur boundaries, reinforce bad patterns?
That's good advice. So as we wrap up, what's the biggest takeaway from all this, the core message about tulpas and subpersonalities?
I think it's that this growing interest, it reflects something bigger. We're exploring our inner worlds more and more.
Mm,
Maybe it's because our lives are so digital, so isolating
yeah,
sometimes.
that makes sense.
And we all crave connection, understanding ourselves better. It shows how diverse human experience can be.
And it seems like the key is approach it all with what the source calls compassionate curiosity.
Exactly. Don't rush to judge, label things as good or bad.
Right.
It's about creating space for people to feel seen, supported, no matter what they're experiencing inside.
That's powerful.
It is.
So, final thought for our listeners, think about how our idea of self might keep changing as we learn more about consciousness,
Yeah.
about how complex it can be, all these possibilities of internal multiplicity, even in a world that feels both super connected and super lonely.
Right.
Maybe take a moment to reflect on your own inner landscape. What voices or aspects do you recognize in yourself? You don't even have to label them. Just notice them. It's a whole new frontier of self-discovery. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Absolutely.
See you next time.